Welcome along. Thanks for joining us. My name is Mark Norfolk, and I'm joined by Tom Diaz. How you doing, Tom?
Doing great. How are you, Mark?
I'm good.
Fantastic.
Let's get straight down to it. One thing that's been on my mind for a little while is when it comes to incremental revenue and implementing an upsell program, especially in the hotel world, no matter what you're doing, though, thinking about that, what are some of the pitfalls you should avoid when you're maybe a GM, senior leadership?
Sure. I mean, heck, let's take it from the top, right? And let's take it from the start. At that level, what we find, and it's so well articulated in many books, most recently, Unreasonable Hospitality, where the author states, the people with the most authority often have the least amount of ground knowledge, but the people on the front lines have the most knowledge with the least authority.
Okay.
So bridge that gap. The senior leaders, let's say it's a GM who's initiating a new program and it's all about, generating upsell revenue. Involve the front line. Involve the middle management who's going to be implementing this program. Ask for some of their input before you unleash the program or get the program kicked off, because a few different things happen there. Number one, as a GM, you're going to gain some knowledge that maybe you didn't have before. Those people who are actually working with guests face to face, they're going to tell you what the pitfalls are. They're going to tell you their concerns, maybe even some of their fears if they really trust you.
That's a good point.
And at the same time, your middle managers seek their input because now everybody feels that they have a voice in the program.
Yeah.
And so you get their buy-in from day one. Because as we've seen, when a new program gets put onto a team and they don't see it coming and it comes out of the clear blue sky, the initial reaction to change is to keep it at an arm's length. A lot of times it's fear.
Yeah.
Right? They're fearing what could happen if they don't perform. Often it's a fear of loss. Well, what's the loss? The way things have been done. Right? Just kind of coasting, just checking people in, handing out keys. Well, oh my gosh, what is this? I was hired for service, not sales. Well, if you had a voice in putting the program together, or if you felt that you had a voice, then you automatically get their buy-in.
Cool. So as a senior leader, GM, you have that authority, of course you do, and you want to implement this. You want to implement an upsell program. It's important from what you're saying there is don't believe you have all the information. You may have a lot of information, and of course you do with the role that you're in, but speak to those people who are doing that job day in, day out. Take their input, because if you've got their input, I like this, you're going to get their buy-in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They feel like they have a part of it. It's not draconian and something that's coming down from the ivory tower and, now we have this whole new program.
Yeah.
They're going to support it from day one.
So avoid thinking that you have all the information that you need to do this.
Yes.
Just speak to the people on those front lines.
Right.
Brilliant. And then once you're implementing something like this, for me, I think it's important to, and you've kind of touched on that, is avoid not communicating or sharing those expectations that you need to be successful.
Yes. Oh, well, we all might have seen this before. One of the most demotivating things that can happen is you have a new set of expectations put on you. You kind of were fuzzy on them at the first place. And then once the program gets going, 3 months, 6 months down the road, you find out as a front office manager that you didn't hit the mark.
Yeah.
And then you say, well, I didn't realize that we were actually tracking conversion. I thought it was all about revenue.
No.
Or, gosh, URI, well, what's that? I never really heard about it. So being very specific on not only the goals, but how to get there.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's demotivating if someone says to me, hey, Tom, I need you to sell $20,000 in upsell revenue, and they leave it at that. Well, now I'm up to my own devices to figure out how to do that. And let's be honest, sometimes people get real creative in generating that $20,000, but it wasn't the way that you wanted them to get it.
Yeah. You've got to be careful when you're implementing an upsell program that's all about incremental revenue. That's another pitfall to avoid that you've just mentioned there, is forgetting that incremental revenue should be generated through service, not at the detriment of service. Don't think that they're mutually exclusive.
That's right. Somebody that I was talking to recently, they came up with a brilliant kind of a one-liner, and they said, Tom, I would rather have my front desk lose the sale the right way than to gain the sale the wrong way.
Oh, I couldn't agree with that more.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if your front desk is gaining the sale the wrong way, well, that turns into service issues. Now what happens? My managers are bogged down answering service issues. And here's one that we come across a lot, and some hotels are doing this, and some hotels put a check mark on it and say, that's okay, we want to do that. But here's one example. Guest comes in at 9 a.m. and a front desk agent says, we don't have any rooms available for you to check in unless you upgrade into this 2-bedroom suite with the gorgeous patio, and this is going to be, $200 more per night. And so the guest is standing there saying, okay, well, what time's check-in? 4 o'clock. Okay, heck, I can stand around for 7 hours or figure out something to do, or I can pay this person $200 to get in. Some hotels say, hey, that's great, we want to do that. And other hotels say, there's no way we're going to do that to our guest. So it's always about service first. And that's what I love about a program like ours. It is service-based.
Yeah.
And when people realize that the best service I can offer my guest is just to tell everybody about the best that I have, then I don't feel like a salesperson. I'm right back to feeling like, yes, this is the highest level of service.
Yeah.
And that's where the money comes from.
I agree. And you touched on this a moment ago. You just threw some numbers out, like $20,000 here, yeah. $30,000 there. Something that I believe you need to be aware of when you're doing an incremental upsell program is setting the right goals. It's not about, you know what? My bosses, they want us to be at 100,000. That we need to be here. We need to be there. Well, if you need to be here or there, why? How are you going to get there? Not thinking about those things really does have a detrimental impact to your success. Yes. We were talking earlier about sort of middle management. Right. And if you're a GM, senior leader, and you're saying, you know what, Tom? We need to generate $30,000 every single month in incremental revenue. You turn to me and then say, whoa, hang on a minute. We've never done those numbers.
Right.
Well, one, that's that predisposition of this is the way it's always been done. But as a leader, I should be asking you, why do you believe that we can't do that? Is there a reason behind us never being able to do that?
Right.
What can I do to help us? So when you're setting those goals, think about what is realistic, but what's going to stretch you without not upsetting, but without losing that buy-in from middle management and that frontline team.
Yes, I agree 100%. I mean, look, when we're giving out goals and people say to us, gosh, I've never hit that before. A great response is, yes, but we've never had this kind of training before.
Yeah.
We've never had this kind of tracking before. We've never had this kind of support before. And so if I'm telling somebody I want you to hit a higher goal, it's also my responsibility to tell you, and here's all the support that's going to help us get there.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're not a magician and you're going to wave a magic wand and all of a sudden at the end of the month I say, wow, you hit the $20,000 and you never did it before. I have to tell you and help you to see the light and to see the vision. I think that's a big part of it too. And we don't talk about it enough maybe, which is share the vision of why this is happening. Revenue in a hotel, for example, and it could be any industry, but revenue in a hotel on upsells, it used to be years ago. At the end of the year, they would look at the balance sheet and say, wow, we made some money on upsells. Isn't that cool? Now that money's in the budget.
Yeah.
Like, we have to hit it.
That's something I see a lot. It's like, well, it's in the budget, we've got to hit it. Well, if it's in the budget and we've got to hit it, how are we going to do that? That's and right. if you're coming from zero and trying to implement something like an upsell program, you've got to be aware that you're not going to see overnight success. It's a journey.
Yes.
And you were saying we've got to be here, we've got to be there. So it is a journey. See it as a journey. See it as, right, month one, we want to aim to increase by this. We want to increase by that.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, you're going to see those changes. So for me, don't see it as a magic wand. We're going to do that. See it as a journey, step by step.
I agree. And also my recommendation would be, when you're communicating to your team and you're starting to measure the first few months of progress, as you mentioned, Mark, it's a journey. Reward progress over perfection.
Oh, that's interesting.
Let people see that you have some wins under your belt. I'm so proud of you for giving it a shot. And look where we have come. We haven't hit our 20,000, but we went from 5,000 last month and now we're at 10,000. Wow, that's huge. Throw a party, celebrate that. And eventually you're going to get to that 20. But people have to have those endorphins pumping through their body. They have to feel like winners. And if they're making progress, well, here, I'll tell you a personal story. And we all have this story about when we were a kid and we came home with the report card and there was one B on it and the rest were A's.
This isn't your report card.
This is only my report card. And Dad got mad because you got the B.
Ah, there.
And I'm like, are you kidding me, man? The last report card was nothing but B's. Reward the progress. The perfection will come in time, but again, nobody's perfect. So give ourselves some grace.
So I just wrote this word down based on that. It's like not forgetting that recognition.
Yes, absolutely.
Recognition is vital, especially from a leader.
Yeah, from a leader, and pat yourself on the back sometime. Give yourself a little bit of grace. I think in business terms, a lot of someone who's on a health journey as well. Look, where you start off at the beginning of the year and where you want to be at the end of the year, that first month you might not see it. The second month you might not see it. The third month you're going to start feeling it a little bit. And that's really going to put a lot of wind in your sails. And all of a sudden, after that first month hits, or after that first notice of progress hits, well, now you're in there all the time, or you've really cleaned up your diet because you see that it does work.
Yeah. So we also want to make sure that we're not on that measuring the wrong things. You've touched on this a little bit already. It's like, are we measuring the right KPIs? Well, if you're looking at an upsell program, don't forget about conversion, obviously.
Yes.
But it's not the be all and end all to start with. It's about those behaviors. Measure those behaviors.
Yes.
Do you have any tools? Not using the right tools to measure your results. Because if it's a program that you're implementing and you know what? You need Tom to create an Excel spreadsheet to do it. He's going to have to do everything manually. There's so many tools out there. For example, Engage. Engage is a really good tool that connects with the PMS. And for Tom now, he can just plug in. He can see where the KPIs are. And then it's giving him that right information to tell that data story. And make sure that you are measuring the right KPIs, looking for those right results.
Yes. I mean, if I can relate a story, recently I was working with a client and they were so focused on conversion. And so how many guests did they check in compared to how many said yes to an upsell? And they were just conversion. All the calls were on conversion. The incentive programs were built on conversion. And they were sitting around scratching their head, gosh, how come we're not making this revenue? And so I told the revenue director, look, if it's just conversion, I could go down to your front desk right now and I can get 100% conversion for the day. And all those upsells are going to be $5 a night.
Yeah.
And I'm going to look like a rock star because I hit the conversion number.
Yeah.
But the other side of that coin is average upsell price. What are we really measuring?
You're adding zero value there, aren't you?
Zero value. In fact, you're hurting the operation because when you're doing low upsells because you're chasing a high conversion, what happens? Well, you're depleting your inventory. So if you and I are front desk agents and I'm going $10, eventually you're going to hit me in the ribs and say, Tom, you got rid of all of our great suites. And I'm going to walk away saying, yeah, but I hit my conversion. Well, did it really matter? No.
There's one word you just said. Well, I say not just said, but you used it in that. And that's the word incentive.
Yeah.
So how many of you out there listening to this, you know what? We're going to put an upsell program in place, but we don't need an incentive. We don't need an incentive. We've employed these people and it's their job.
Right. Yeah. Well,
not going to work, is it?
It's not going to work. I read a book recently and I hated it when I turned to this page and the guy was asked, hey, how do you motivate your employees? And the response was, I don't motivate them. I hire them. If I have to motivate them, I got the wrong person for the job. And when I read that, I said, my goodness, how out of touch.
Yeah.
Because the role has changed. At the front desk, it used to be handing out keys, smiling. You're wearing the name tag, palms up motion when you point to the elevator. All those check boxes, which are service, the hospitality is how you make people feel.
Yeah. It's all about emotion.
It is about emotion. And let's not forget, our people at the front desk also have emotion. So if you're not building in something for them to get that return, different ways that they think. And I know because I worked at a front desk. I know you did too.
Yeah.
And we think like this, hey, look at all the money that I've generated for this company. My goodness, can I get a raise or something? Can I get a little, extra PTO? Can I get, what's my cut? What's keeping me going?
And there's people on that front desk who feel like that. Like they're busting themselves to do this to get that revenue. Right. But there are people, don't get me wrong, where, you know what? Why can't I just get this and that? Because it's my job.
Sure.
When I say there needs to be an incentive plan, it should be based on what you've generated, what you've put into it.
Yeah.
So don't see an incentive plan as a leader that you're giving revenue, you're giving money away, or even recognition away.
Right.
For your team doing nothing or the bare minimum. You can do so many things with an incentive plan.
Oh, yes. And you know, Mark, we know that the way you structure an incentive plan is a message to your team of what's important to you.
Ooh,
Right?
yeah.
Isn't it true? So if I'm saying, hey, for example, it's conversion. Well, okay, well, let me just lowball everybody and I'll get all the sales.
Yeah.
We could even look at housekeeping. A lot of times a hotel will say, okay, for the housekeepers, you need to clean a minimum of 20 rooms per day. So if somebody tells me that and I'm working in housekeeping, I'm saying, okay, I can clean 20 rooms. I'm going to clean the 20 smallest rooms that we have. And now we've got no suites.
Yeah.
So instead, maybe a different way of thinking of it is, and I don't know if anybody does this or if it's even possible, but hey, what if we thought about how many square feet you were cleaning per day?
Yeah.
Well, maybe now, instead of cleaning 20 small rooms, you want to clean 10 big suites. Well, that's going to help our front desk. Now, maybe that's thinking far into the future. I don't know if anybody does it again, but what number are we looking at?
Yeah.
I think about my buddy Mike, who went on his health journey, and after about 2 weeks into the year, he called me up. I'm not going to the gym anymore. What are you talking about? You're doing great. Well, I looked at the scale and I'm heavier than I was at the beginning of the year, so I don't think it works. Maybe you're measuring the wrong thing. Don't measure how much you weigh. Measure how many times did you walk through the door of that gym.
Yeah.
Was it a 30-minute workout 4 times a week? Or was it one workout for an hour and a half and now you're sore and now you can't go back the rest of the week and now you're eating bad and now the scale goes up?
Yeah.
What are we measuring? And is that impacting the number we really want to impact?
Yeah. So based on that, I would say don't see an incentive plan as something that you don't need. See it as something really vital to the success, but link it to the right things.
Yes.
So if you want to achieve X and you have 10 people, maybe set a minimum expectation around that and say, you know what, we need to hit X, but there's 10 people here. So I want everyone to generate a minimum of, say, $1,000 in incremental revenue. Yes. And then if you get below that, there'll be no incentive for you. But once you're getting above that, there could be a 3-tier incentive program where they could get 5% once they generate over that number on everything that they've generated, and then 10% on a different one. And then it's showing that progression. You're getting people driving towards it long term. Yes. Even connect it to your customer service scores.
Love it.
But don't see it as a burden. Don't see it as something that you don't need.
Well, and Mark, if I may also, let's not see it as a burden on the company. When you and I first met so many years ago, working together with a different client overseas, I remember going into one of the steering group meetings and the HR department was there. And they said, my goodness, we're paying some of these people so much money. Why should we be paying them so much money? And we said, well, let's look at the numbers. How much is that person generating?
It's what you're keeping.
It's
not what you give away. Yes.
It's what you're keeping, not what you give away. And then the discussion became from HR, just to be completely honest, they said, well, we're getting complaints from some of the managers because their front desk agents are making more than they are.
Yeah.
I said, well, then tell the manager to get on the front desk. Sometimes the people who are great at sales are not great managers. And sometimes great managers are not great salespeople. They're really good at implementing a program. Those are 2 different skill sets.
Yeah.
So if that happens, give them a high five.
Yeah.
But also build in some type of management incentive where they're being incented on the team's performance. Because what does that do? If I'm a middle manager and I'm not getting paid on my personal upsells, but I'm getting paid a small percentage of my team's upsells, well, now my focus has shifted to coaching my team.
Yeah.
Instead of jumping up and trying to take as many check-ins as possible. And that's where my value really is as a manager.
I think that's another pitfall that people can fall into is by implementing this. You touched on managers, like not having someone who's responsible for it, to drive it at that front desk, to drive it at that front line, and then not incentivizing them as well. Because if you don't have someone taking full responsibility alongside what they're doing and the right upsell program, that right person, we call it a champion when we work with clients, you're looking at 15 minutes a week if you're doing it right.
Yes.
with all the tools.
Right.
But if it's not, if everyone's job is to generate this revenue with no one driving it, it becomes no one's job.
That's right. And no one's responsibility.
Yes. Yeah, responsibility.
Yeah.
In many cases, people do see, and we've touched on this a little bit earlier, service and sales, they're two different things. So that's a pitfall to avoid. You need to see them as the same thing. You can generate great service through revenue and vice versa.
Yes.
But if you've got people on your front desk who go, well, you know what? I was only employed to serve my guests, to serve my clients, serve my customers. Yes. One pitfall that people don't, one pitfall that they fall into is the way they recruit. Once they implement this.
Yes. It's so true, Mark. I mean, look, the role has changed. And if the role has changed, then the way that we recruit should change. And if I ran TomDiazHotels.com, I would also be rewriting the job description. Particularly, if I may be quite blunt, particularly if I was in a union situation, and I know that can be a battle to rewrite anything in a union situation. By the way, my dad was a part of a union for 30 years, and I support him and I love him 100%. But what's that, again, what's the expectation? Am I hiring salespeople, or am I just hiring people to hand out keys? Anybody could do that. I could teach my 10-year-old nephew how to look at a computer and get a key and give it to the guy. What I can't teach them is the willingness to connect with somebody, right?
Yeah, it comes back to that emotion.
It comes back to it. The offer is the service.
Yeah.
Imagine that you and I are checking in, your family's in front of me, and you're offered a beautiful suite with a gorgeous city view, and I'm with my family, and they don't offer it to me. I might be wondering why.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm going to create a scenario, and I'm going to believe, well, they didn't like me because I'm from Texas. They didn't like me because of the way I was dressed. They didn't like me because of A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Yeah. And that wasn't the case, maybe, but that was the perception. So, if you're going to wake up as a front desk agent, you make the decision. Either I'm offering the best to everybody, or I'm not offering anything to anybody.
So the way you recruit, you got to find those people. So look at your adverts, and especially if you've got that incentive plan. I say if, some people don't do it, but with that incentive plan, you can bring that into the way you advertise for these people. And it needs to be seen as a service and sales job.
Right.
So Tom, thank you so much for your time. We've gone through a lot of the pitfalls to avoid. Yeah. So we've gone from like the people at the top, they have all the authority and not all of the information. So don't fall into the trap of not speaking to those people who have the information that you may be missing. We've also touched on the pitfall of not communicating goals or expectations effectively, and then that pitfall of setting the right goals, looking at the right measurements. The biggest pitfall for me was not having an incentive plan, thinking that you don't need it. Try to see it as what I'm keeping rather than what I'm giving away. Having a champion, not having someone who takes full responsibility for the team when it comes to that incremental revenue on your thing. So don't fall into that trap that you don't need that person. You don't need to employ someone new. And when it comes to employment and you're looking at implementing an upsell program around incremental revenue, you really need to look at how you recruit for people coming on board. Don't forget those things. Again, thank you so much for your time, Tom, and we will see you soon.